somebody that's ahead of the game. Bernadette, you're laughing. You know the crack. I'd need somebody on it and it lamming me. My head was in a million different places, all good on Facebook. Brilliant, Luna. Thank you so much. Brilliant. Okay, so how did we find, or how did you find, I'm just going to run through the overview of last night, but how did you find it? And does anybody have any questions? While I'll run through the not the replay, but the recap. If anybody has any questions or wants anything clarified, then please put it in the chat and I will be sure to answer that. So, okay, good, Emer, was it helpful? I'm delighted it was helpful. Do you know, no questions? Okay, brilliant. Do you know, sometimes my intention to do this is to help. It always is. It always is to help. But then I want to help more. And then I get frustrated and annoyed. So I've kind of spent the day frustrated and annoyed, like, as you know, wanting to do more, wanting to do more, wanting to do more. So I'm going to take my own advice today and stay in the step that I'm in and just stay with you on this process. I get frustrated about the system and get frustrated about the knowledge that's out there and kind of feel like I'm not doing enough. That's the honest to God truth of how I felt after the session last week. So you know, I've said to Leona today, I'm just going to try and stay in the step that I'm in. I'm going to try and stay as close to you as possibly I can, as intentionally as I can, and deliver in the best way that I can, and hope that it's making a difference. Hope that you're starting to see some chinks of light. Hope that you're starting to understand yourself in a different way. So that's the honesty about how I felt about last night. And I love honesty. I love open, honest conversation because I think it's how we learn. So I hope that I'm going to give you more of myself tonight in that intention, and answer as many questions as you need, or as you want. And for those of you that are on and the collective, I'll see you in the group after this, straight after this as well. That's okay. So recap, principle, 2 principles we looked at last night. The first principle was psychosomatic unity, and the second principle was wrapping. I introduced the idea of wrapping. Yes, Jill, it's a difficult topic, and I appreciate that, completely appreciate it. So thank you. It's a difficult topic to deliver, but it's because it's so hard. Felt I want to be in the middle of it, teaching more and more and more. And I know that, you know, we've got what we've got. So thank you for that acknowledgement. So we did 2 principles. We did unity, and we talked about the different levels of unity that we have. And for some of us, and maybe not even you, maybe some of your loved ones you're recognizing might be in some sort of disunity, might be in some sort of protective disunity, which we were beginning to understand last night. So disunity, not able to feel at all, a level of unity, but he's feeling some feelings, but with real dis-ease, real discomfort, real resistance. And then this other type of unity with panic, unity with shutdown, unity that is quite severe on the system. And then we opened up to why would that be a reality? And why would that be happening? And we opened up to the second principle that I hope everybody really got their head around, which is wrapping. And I introduced wrapping. Wrapping is trademarked to our model, to the clearing model. It is a particular understanding, a particular protocol within the clearing method. And wrapping is one of the least understood, I believe, psychological phenomenons that there is. People talk about emotional dysregulation. People talk about lack of co-regulation, all of these amazing words, but the impact of that is what wrapping is. So the science around wrapping is lack of co-regulation, is lack of introspection, is all of these fancy words. But fundamentally, what it comes down to us, to you and me, is that we learn how to feel about our feelings. We learn how to think about our feelings. We learn what our feelings will do to us from these interactions that we've had as children and young adults, and also adults as well. You know, we can have these interactions in our relationships as we're in the adulthood, and we can pick these up from our culture. So wrapping becomes a really important part of the puzzle, because what happens on the why we get into turmoil is partly rapping's responsibility. If we cannot be within, then it is because of all of this noise that's around the emotional content, then we disunify, then we have dis-ease, then we have trauma responses. So we're starting to hopefully see, I'm hoping that you're starting to see your why. You're starting to see why you respond in the way you do. So I want to take you through three particular concepts of rapping. So we've talked about what rapping is, we've explained what rapping is, and now we're going to get into the detail of what rapping is. So three very specific forms of rapping. Is everybody okay with that? Is everybody happy enough that we go into the detail of this with an understanding of rapping? And everybody happy enough that I've explained the process of rapping, its origins, why it happens from a scientific point of view, and how we experience it as a human, as a human being, how we begin to experience it. Is everybody happy? Does anybody have any questions before I go on to explain the three principles on there? Everybody's happy enough? Nobody's any problems? Good, great, okay. I'm wise tonight. I've brought tea. I didn't bring tea last night, and I've nearly swallowed my own tongue. We thirst at the ends. So I'm wise. I've brought tea. Okay, so there's three very basic principles, right, inside this one principle of rapping. There's generic rapping. So what is generic rapping? Generic rapping is really simple, that you have a view of all feelings as bad. You have a feeling of all feelings being wrong. You have an understanding of all feelings being avoidable. No, you know, all of it. That you just don't do feelings and you don't like them and you resist them and you don't want them. Does anybody know anybody like that? Yes, right? And we have a generalized story around emotion. Yes, Sharon. Yeah. We have a generalized story around emotion. We have a generalized view of it. We have a generalized understanding of it, but it's very generic. It's not specific. You know, it's not like I can feel one feeling and not the other. It's just this general idea about why feelings are bad, why you shouldn't employ them, why you shouldn't be in them, why you should stay in your head, why you should stay in your logic. So this generalized idea, and maybe a lot of narrative around that if you really poke at it. So generic rapping is what we call that. So it's an overview. It's an overall generic idea about what emotions are and the stories and the feelings about those feelings are quite generic. It's across the board. Everybody get that, okay? So the second one that we're looking at, which is much more common, right, is specific rapping. Rapping around very specific feelings. Anger. I don't know anybody. Well, that's not true. I don't know many people that don't have some level of rapping around anger because how anger has always been treated. I don't know anybody that doesn't have any level of rapping around fear. So let's talk about fear as an emotion. Is there anybody in complete unity with fear? Is there anybody completely comfortable with fear? And fear as an emotion for me is one of the bigger ones. It's like anger. And the reason it's bigger is because it's somatically bigger. It's emotionally bigger. It has more intensity. It has more DNA in it. When I say about DNA of an emotion is how it feels in the body and what responses it has. And that's why anger and fear tend to be, not exclusively now, but as an example of specific rapping. Anger and fear tend to be the most wrapped emotions because there's the most experience around them. There's the most detail around them. There's the most cultural difficulties around them. Does that make sense to you? Yeah. And do you know anybody or do you know yourself that has some wrapping around fear? Do you have some fear around fear? Do you have some resistance around fear? Do you have some stories around fear that'll turn you mad, make you crazy? So that's wrapping around fear. Yeah, that's wrapping around fear or wrapping around anger. Is everybody with me? So generalized, so big overview wrapping, which is big sweeping statements about all feelings, about every feeling, And then we have these specific pockets of emotion that we don't like, that we don't want to touch. Everybody with me? Nobody lost? Okay. And keep a wee eye in the chat for you. Brilliant. Okay. Now, the third part is what I understand is wrapping around core emotion. Now, core emotion is a different ball game altogether. Okay. So, and I have never seen anybody without wrapping around core emotion. Such is the experience of core emotion. Now, I'm going to take you into the third principle, which is core emotion. So we talked about the reason that you have emotional turmoil, and the reason that you have emotional turmoil is often a unity issue, a wrapping issue. And now the third principle is possibly because you have a core emotion. And core emotions and wrapping come together like jelly and ice cream. They are part of the one package. People are saying, I don't eat jelly or ice cream, but you know what I mean, right? Milk and tea, right? They come together. It's nearly impossible for not to have one without the other. So the third element inside wrapping is core emotion, and that opens us up to this third principle, this new understanding. Everybody with me? So before we get into the third principle, I'm just going to share my screen and I'm going to show you them in written form for any of my visual learners who like to see it visually. And then we'll move on. Leona, anything on Facebook that I need to be answering any questions? So let me see.
Not just yet.
Brilliant. So, okay. So generalized wrapping, the three types of wrapping: generalized wrapping, specific wrapping, and core wounded wrapping. The questions that I'm going to ask you later will be pertaining to this. All right. Okay. And this has been both in my experience, and not only in my experience, but in as I've said before, lots of clinical hours, lots of clinical evidence that we have gathered. So this is really important. So anybody, any questions about that? Is everybody happy? Anybody visual that loves to see a wee visual document instead of me just blabbing on? Yes, Sharon's nodding. Sharon said aye, surely Sharon. Brilliant. Okay, so that is the three types of wrapping. So what we're going to do is, are you already getting a feel for yourself here? Are you already getting a feel whether you have specific wrapping or generalized wrapping? Could you be able to identify that now? Do you know which ones you wrap? Do you know which feelings that you have wrapping around? Just let me know in the chat if it's a yeah, definitely specific. Brilliant, Sharon. Brilliant. Great, Michelle. Anybody else? Brilliant. So you have core emotion, Emer. I know. We're going to go and talk about that now. Okay. Specific and core, Liz. I love it. Brilliant. Core. Okay. So let's talk about specific and core. Seem to be the same to me. No, they're not. Rachel. So let's look at that. Great question, Bob, right? Specific and core. So specific is an emotion, right? Like a singular emotion, like anger, like excitement that you don't like. But a core emotion is often about a core experience that is bigger than the emotion itself. Does that make sense? Yeah, got it? Right. So let's talk about core emotion and core experiences, right? And let's talk about the totality of the experience of a core emotion or core experience. Let's talk about what that experience looks like. Now, a core emotion is often an emotion that has come from an experience. Everybody with me? That has come from a difficult experience at a time, note that I say a time, across your timeline. It can be in childhood, but it can be anywhere in your timeline. I have seen and heard people have core experiences, core woundedness, up in their teenage years with nothing really to report in childhood. So what we're understanding here is that a core emotion is often coming from a core experience. And a core experience is often a very, very difficult experience that has happened, and there has been a response in the body that has happened, and that has never been understood, integrated, worked through, unhooked, and let go of. So it remains lodged in the body. Yes. Now, the reason that I didn't use the word traumatic experience is because we start to get into detailed explanations of what is trauma and what is not trauma. And for some people here, they may have had what they believe as trauma-free lives, so wouldn't really recognize that they have had trauma. So I am trying to be as generic as I can when we're trying to understand emotion, because not all core emotion comes from these big newsworthy events, these big traumatic events. Yeah. So what we're understanding here is that core experiences, core emotions can be traumatic, but don't have to be newsworthy to be core experiences. Don't have to be the stuff that you see in newspapers. Don't have to be the stuff that you see in ACEs. ACEs is adverse childhood experiences. They don't have to be that. I have worked myself with people who have been years in the mental health system. And one of the main reasons is they've been years in the mental health system without any help is because they've been chasing big trauma. The feelings that they have in their body, the emotions that they have, the experience that they have within doesn't match any big story in their outer world. Does that make sense to everybody? And they have been chasing and chasing and chasing this idea of trauma. And the reality of it was there was something that happened in a core experience that from the outside didn't look traumatic, but on the inside was for this person. And they didn't deem it worthy enough to be trauma. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes, we minimize our experiences, surely. But this wasn't about minimizing an experience. This is what's important. This was that what people were searching for, what practitioners were searching for this client was the big trauma, and there was no big trauma. And so it wasn't about minimizing the experience. Yes, Grania. It's a really important point. Yeah. It's a really, really important point. That when we talk about core experiences, we're widening our understanding of tall traumas, big traumas, all the ACEs, alcoholism, gambling, domestic violence, all the big stuff, sexually, we're talking about all of that stuff, right down to the experiences that happened within that nobody even batted an eyelid about. But they were, so let's understand, trauma isn't what happened to us, it's what happened within us. So if we have a core experience, if we have experience that's really difficult, it changes the core of who we are, which is what a core experience is. Changes the core of what we believe ourselves to be. If it changes the core of what we believe this world to be, that core experience, whether it's in a trauma environment or not, it'll impact how you feel about you. It'll impact how you feel about the world around you. It'll impact upon your sense of self and sense of world. And so that becomes what happens inside you. Not the what happened, but what happened in me. It's a different narrative, right? So these core experiences happen sometimes with our conscious awareness, sometimes not. Sometimes the timeline moves and we don't know. But these experiences and the emotions belonging to them get locked in the body. And they get locked in a body and locked in the body in a way that they don't ever get healed, processed, moved through, integrated, understood, undone. So if they're in the body, then what will happen to those experiences is that they will speak through the mind. This is where we get these intrusive thoughts. This is where we get these, whispers of horribleness. You're nothing, you're worthless, you're useless. So what we understand is what happens is an experience gets trapped in the body and then speaks through the mind. So then we have this bottom-up approach. The body is speaking through the mind is aggravating the body is aggravating the mind, and we get this looping effect. Is that familiar to anybody here? Right. Familiar, everybody's nodding, just so that you know everybody's nodding. So we get this looping effect. If we go after the thoughts in the mind, then we get scrambled because we go on the 1,000,000 thoughts and 1,000,000 memories, and we end up in Timbuktu trying to understand something that we've no clarity on. Is everybody with me? So these are what core woundednesses, core emotions are. Now, these core emotions don't tend to have one isolated feeling. They tend to have a lot more, which is what the difference is between a specific emotion and core emotion. Do you see that, Rachel? Yeah, it's tiring, it's exhausting, Grania. Absolutely, I know myself. I know listening to the wound through the mind is excruciating. And trying to find it in the mind is excruciating. But anyway, so I'm going to show you a graphic in a minute, right? That'll explain this. So all my visual learners, you'll see a wee graphic and you'll go, right? Now, we have this noise in the body, this emotion, this somatics in the body. So it feels in the body. Now, core emotion feels with an intensity that takes your breath away. Did everybody understand that? Did everybody experience that? It's like a sucker punch. It's like somebody just whacks you in the stomach or in the chest. Core emotion normally takes you out of your environment because you have to pay attention to that is within, right? Core emotion normally is tough and heavy and deep rooted and sore somatically. It normally has a frequency that is so excruciatingly painful that you feel that you have no control over, that you feel you can't do anything about, and your mind just runs rabbit with it. So we're starting to see the depth of emotion. They're starting to see the depth that is in core emotion. Now, we talked about this in day one. What's your mind's job whenever you're in pain? Your mind's job is to source and solve. So your mind is, if this emotion arrives in your body, your mind is going to run with it, going to try its best to solve it. Now, let me show you this graphic and then we'll go on to explain core emotion. And then, hopefully, it's like a tsunami hitting. Absolutely. It's like core emotion is like a tsunami hitting. So I am now hoping, before I go on to explain, that you're beginning to understand why you're in emotional turmoil. And no, it's not weakness. No, it's not. There's no shame in it. No, it's not something wrong with you. No, you're not crazy. No, you're not mad. No, you're not any of it. You're a human being who's had an experience in the past that's lodged in the body and is replaying. Or you're a human being who doesn't know how to handle emotions and you've been wrapped like crazy. And so you're not getting one emotion, you're getting them all. And that's all that's happening. Nothing more complicated, no wiring problems, nothing more than that at this minute in time. That's what we're looking at. Okay, so we're beginning to understand why maybe if you don't have any emotion, it's safer not to have the emotion because that's the shit show that happens if you do. So I'm going to stay out of that and stay up here in my head. Thank you very much. And no amount of inviting from you or telling me how wonderful emotions are is going to bring me down there. Thank you. I'll stay here in my mind where I'm healthy and happy and get on with life. So these are the options that we're looking at, right? So let me show you, right? let me show you. No. So let's look at, let me know that you can see this. Can you see this okay? Hi, Leona, can you see that on Facebook all right? Have I lost you? Can you see it on Facebook, do you know?
No, you haven't lost me. I'm still here. Yeah, it's all good.
All good?
Mhm.
Okay. So core experience or core wound normally comes with detailed language. It normally has a repetitive language pattern that's familiar. Now, here's the difficulty with a core wound. It'll have a detailed language pattern that's familiar. But if your detailed language pattern is worthlessness, how many ways, how many ways or how many words do you have for worthless? Worthless, less than, not enough, not good enough, useless. Do you see the problem with words? So you'll have a repetitive language that'll speak about the frequency of the emotion in the body. Then you have this high frequency emotion that's often described as unbearable, like tsunami, gut-wrenching, raw, can't do. Yeah. Then you have your nervous system activation. Your nervous system will have to be activated because of the intensity of the emotion and the dangerousness of the language pattern. Then you'll have your defense system activation. Then you'll have all of the somatics go alongside this, and then you'll have this physical well-being. Now, if I said to you, and you're likely to like literally walk away now at this stage, but I'm going to risk it anyway, right? There is if we can have no wrapping around this, there is amazing wisdom in this wound. There's amazing wisdom in what's coming through you. The problem is there will be wrapping around that you will never be able to hear that clearly. You'll never be able to understand what the core emotion is trying to show you, because there's so much other noise around it. There's so much shame, there's so much blame, there's so much discrimination, there's so much, weakness, there's so much helplessness, there's so much whatever wrapping that you have around that. It becomes unbearable to hold. And so what we try to do is get away from it, rightly so. So yes, we're understanding core emotion, but we're understanding core emotion in the context of wrapping. Does that make sense to you? So inside this core emotion, inside your core emotion, inside your core experience, do you understand your own wrapping? Can you even hear it now as I'm saying it to you? Do you understand what you say about yourself in relation to your core emotion? If you do, please put it in the chat. I'm going to start it. What I said to myself, and I introduced this last night, my core emotion was nothingness. That was my core woundedness, the pain of that. The way that all I could see was darkness. I couldn't see a future. I couldn't see the world in front of me. All I could see was blackness, darkness, nothingness, no future, nothing for me. I could see nothing. And I couldn't learn, I couldn't be in that emotion to understand it, to heal it, because the noise around it was, this is a form of madness. You're crazy. You're going to the big white coats. This is nothing that you'll ever come back from. This is nothing that you can survive. This is going to eat you up. This is going to swallow you up. You're never going to come out of it. It's going to be a continuous process, and so on and so forth. So I'm asking about your wrapping. Brilliance. I can see them coming through. The wrapping around, how do you feel about your core emotion? You feel that you're not good enough because you have that core emotion. It's amazing. Look at that. I'm not good enough because I have this feeling in me. Isn't that incredible? I'm unlikable because I have this feeling in me. Isn't that incredible? Listen to that. I have this core emotion and I'm unlikable and I'm lonely and I'm not enough. We're listening to the rapping, guys. The bloody rapping, not even listening to the woundedness. We're listening to the rapping. What we say to yourself. I told myself I was mad because I felt that way. I told myself that I was never going to recover because I felt that way. I am alone because I feel that way. I'm not enough. Brilliant. And you can imagine if that woundedness, if that core woundedness is worthiness, can you imagine how if the rapping is worthiness as well, how it just seeks to keep you stuck in unworthiness? How it would just pin you in. Yes, Grania, it's never good enough. Nothing's good enough. And you use all this evidence against yourself. So now I'm starting to get animated because I know I know that you feel it. I know that you can see it, right? And in seeing it, I know that we can undo it. Because you can't change what you don't know. You can't change what you can't see. So we have this wrapping, core wounded wrapping that sits around our core wounds, which makes our core wounds bloody impossible to heal. Not that they are impossible. Let me hear that well here, right? Not that they are impossible to heal, but they feel like they're impossible to heal because they sit around so much noise that we are unconscious to. And we think it's this big ball of madness, this big ball of yuck, and really in effect, it is a core experience that is wrapped so badly in how you feel about it and what you think it'll do to you. I'm going to breathe there. The language in somatics amplifies and proves the language of the wound. It absolutely does. It all starts to feed in on itself. So we've had 3 types of wrapping: generalized wrapping, overview, specific on 1 or 2 feelings, and then this core wrapping. I have this experience in me. This experience in me is multi-leveled, and I hate the experience. I'm wrong because of the experience. I'm not enough because of the experience. I deserve to be alone because of this that is in me. How does it feel to hear this? Tell me in the chat. Or am I starting to make sense? Is it starting to make sense to you? And then who do we blame for emotional turmoil? Ourselves. Who do we blame? Because you don't blame anybody else. Whose fault is it? And then more. And so this entire process has always been about understanding why you're in emotional turmoil. Not that it's something that happens to you, but it's something that's happening within you. And now you're starting to peel back the layers of what's happening within you. I'm going to say that again. For some people, emotional turmoil feels like something that happens to you that you don't have no control over. You have no control over it when you don't know. Sharon, is this tugging? Is this hitting hard? Are you all right? Now, don't you cry because you'll have me crying. All right, I'm no good. All right, I'm not today, Sharon. I'm feeling a wee bit emotional myself today. So, starting to feel more control over it, Linda. Yes, absolutely. Right? Absolutely. When we understand the component parts of something, when we understand the recipe, we can pull a recipe together. We can mix something, we can bake something, we can produce something. But when we don't understand a recipe, we're all over the place. It feels like turmoil. So we're beginning to see the components that create turmoil within us so that we can take charge of those bloody levers and begin to get back under control. But we need to understand what's happening to us first. How are we doing? Is everybody all right? Yeah. All good, Bernadette. Brilliant. Okay. Anybody, any questions at this point? Does anybody need to see any more documentation? We'll go back and forward over the two documents. And will we go back to the original wrapping document and see how it all comes together? Does that feel like a fit for you? Let me know. Yeah? Okay. So if we remember, if we look at the core emotion, core wound, core experience, we're talking about a multi-level experience, multi-level experience in terms of a multi-process experience. There's emotion, there's somatics, there's physicals, there's defense, there's action, there's nervous system action that brings all of its own stuff. There's the thoughts and the detail of the thoughts. And that sits at the heart of the experience. Yeah. And then, I'm just going to get this wrapping document up for you. And then, so if you'd imagine that core wounded document, yeah. Can everybody see that? Or are you looking at nothing again? What he's looking at?
We're looking at the wrapping board, Sean.
Yeah, it's there, Sean. Everything's good.
You're looking at the wrapping board, Liz, are you? Are you looking at the wrapping board, Liz?
Yes, the one at
Right,
the angle
okay,
of the center.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you imagine, right, that we core wounded document right in the middle and it's not anger. And then you have all of these other emotions about that emotion, of that core emotion, like anger and shame and blame and loss and fear. And then there's people like me that tell you the answer to the pain is in the body. And you're like, are you joking? I'm going to stay up here in my head. I'm not going down there, because that is one hell of a show down there. Because it's not one singular experience. It's a multi-leveled, emotional, somatic experience that you're having. And you want yourself to be calm in the face of that. You want yourself not to eat the wine. Eat the wine, you see how bad it is tonight. Drink the wine or eat the food or do whatever you want to do. You should be in control. You should be managing this better. You know more. You be. So let's have a wee bit of compassion for ourselves as we understand the complexities within us. A wee bit of self-compassion. Because you know what we're doing when we have a wee bit of self-compassion? We're stripping those first layers away. We're stripping the first layers of wrapping away. Okay, so let's take us back. Let's take us back to the document. Oh. Here we go. 3 types of wrap. Have I done a good enough job at explaining the 3 types of wrapping? Yeah. Generalized, specific, core wound wrapping. I would imagine if you're in the knee deep in core wound that you don't have generalized wrapping, you have very specific wrapping about specific emotions, and you may have core wounded wrapping as well. I've never seen anybody that just has one of these. So if you have 2 of these, then that's okay. That's normal. I had the whole shebang and shaboodle, just so we know. I had everything. I had generalized wrapping, specific wrapping, core wounded. I had it all. I wasn't getting out of this one easy. I had it all. I had a generalized understanding of all difficult emotion being completely and utterly horrific and stay away from, and spent about 10 years in my head completely away from my body. And then I had very specific wrapping around fear, very specific wrapping around sadness. And then I had this core or wounded wrapping. So after the birth of my first son, when I had no control over the emotional content that came, all of this birthed alongside it. And the experience was not, it was a traumatic experience in and of itself. It was an overwhelming experience because I had generalized wrapping, specific wrapping, core wounded wrapping all at the same time and had no control, and my hormones were all out of whack, and I had this new baby, and all of this material was coming, and all of this noise and volume was coming. And I literally had to sit and peel it apart, piece by piece, in order to be able to make sense of it. So, have we any questions at this stage? Brilliant, Grania, thank you. Brilliant, okay. Anybody, any questions? So I'm going to bring you back, okay? And I'm going to get you to ask yourself, so I'm going to ask you questions that you're going to add to the portfolio questions that you had last night, right? And then what you're going to do is tomorrow night, I'm going to give you all of the answers to that. And then we're going to give you a plan on how to work forward, okay? So it's only 3 questions, and you know what the questions are because I've already shown you them, right? But I'm going to share my screen so that you can physically see it. I think I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Okay. Test 2. So you did test 1 last night, you're doing test 2 tonight. Test 2. Have you answered, have you got part A? Have you got generalized wrapping? Yes or no? Part B, have you got specific wrapping? Yes or no? If you've got specific wrapping, do you know what feelings that you don't like? Do you know what feelings you have a story around? Part C, do you have core wounded wrapping? Yes or no? And do you know the detail of that core wounded wrapping? Do you know what it says? So we're now building an understanding of why we're in emotional turmoil. We're building it through the test 1, test 2, and test 3s tomorrow night. You're building a very detailed understanding of why you are in specific emotional turmoil. Okay. Now, do you remember at the beginning of the series yesterday, I said that emotional turmoil sounds like this. It sounds like nervous system activation. It sounds like confusion in your mind. It sounds like the experience of it is like this. Can you start to understand why you're having those experiences? Has these 2 nights helped you understand why those experiences are part of your experience? Just a yes or no for me. Just so that I know that just a yes or no in the chat for me would be lovely. Yes. Good. Yes. Yeah. Is there anybody completely lost? Is there anybody thinking, I haven't got a clue even what you're talking about? Which would be really helpful for me to know, honestly. Okay. Got it. Jenny, you're still struggling. Good. Okay. And if you don't want to answer here, if you send me a wee email and tell me why, sort of, Lou, brilliant. I love the honesty. It's really important. Okay. And is it because it's not specific enough, Lou, or is it because it's overwhelming?
Well, I know exactly what the core wound is.
Yeah.
And what it's wrapped around it. I'm not sure if it actually connects to it, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
What actually happened and what I feel about it seem to be 2 different things, what I've wrapped it up in.
But it can be. So it can be. Great question. It absolutely can be, because the stuff that we wrap it doesn't have to be related to what it is. The stuff that we wrap it in is the stuff that comes from our culture, that comes from previous experiences. Is that helpful?
That is spot on. Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Brilliant. So fantastic. So that connection is going to be really important for you, and a real brilliant clarifying question.
Thank you.
Is that helpful, Joel? Good. You all right? Okay. All right. Mind yourself. All right. Okay. Okay. I don't know what my wrapping emotion is, and the lose question helped you. So you know what your emotions are, but you don't know what you say about it. You don't know what you're saying about it. You don't know what your response is. So you can't separate the two. Sometimes takes a wee bit of time just to slow that process down in yourself. And that what we understand is we need two particular skills to be able to decipher this stuff. One is metacognition and the other is introspection. So levels of, I'll put it this way, Jenny, right? Do you know whenever you're trying to understand yourself, and when you have an emotion and a somatic, but they're very closely linked at an experience level, they feel very similar. Does that make sense? And you can't distinguish between what of this is emotion or what of this is somatic, or what of this is emotion and what of this is hormonal, because they're very closely rubbing up against one another. That's a real skill that we have to build in ourselves. It's the inquiry. It's the inquiry inside. So if you've been locked out, and I'm not saying that you have, Jenny, but if you've been in your mind for a long time, and now you're trying to make sense of your body, you wouldn't make sense of it in this short time, especially if you've been locked out for a while. So go very, very, very gentle. And it is a process of listening, because I don't know you better than you know you. Okay, brilliant. Now there it is, Jenny. So it's fear around loneliness. So loneliness being the core and fear around that. Fantastic. Yes, but even this inquiry, even this beautiful, gentle inquiry, without me telling you, is so important, because whoever was in clearing today, who was in the clearing class today, Brita, I think Brita, you're here. There is nobody knows you better than you. There is no therapist with power more than you have. It's your knowledge. There's nobody that knows you better than you. And sometimes it takes that inward look. Sometimes it takes that turn in. Sometimes it takes just exactly what you're doing, Jenny. So be really gentle. And I'm so glad you put your hand up. I'm so glad you said you're not getting the intricacies of it. Just a gentle, slow process. Yeah. Brilliant. So shutdown becomes your thing, Michelle. And again, if you're shutting down in unity, then you're going to need, that's going to be your, when we get to tomorrow, if anybody shuts down, that's going to be your first process to learn how to regulate shutdown. Yeah. Brilliant. Escape. No one can help me. I'm on my own. Brilliant, Claire. Now we're starting to listen to the wrapping around the emotion that you can't get at. And that needs challenged. We need to understand, like Lou was saying, we need to understand where that wrapping comes from. We need to understand where its origins are. We need to understand why it's there. And we need to question it. Begin the process of questioning. When I started questioning this wrapping that was around this emotion, is nothingness a disease? Is nothingness madness? Is nothingness some sort of kind of mental health? And as I began to look at that and challenge that, it started to fall away. And the closer I got to healing that nothingness, hearing it anyway, firstly. So there is where we are. All right. And I love your clarity of questions. I love Lou. I love the way that you asked that, Lou, and you allowed me to help me clarify that. But I'm going to give it back to you, right? Because there is no one understands this stuff better than you. Unfortunately, the answer to the pain is the pain. I wish it was another way, but it's not. And accessing that pain is part of the process, but not at risk of your safety. Your safety has to be first. Which is why when we talk about if anybody is disunified from their body, there's an entire process of unification. And if tomorrow night, when we're going to do the plan, that you and your questions have answered I disunify, then the first thing I'll be saying to you is that there's no other work done. Don't go near core woundedness. Don't go near wrapping. What we want to do is regulate and titrate you softly and gently back to your body so it's safe for you. So when we get to the end of this, yeah, not really, it depends. Like there's very specific work that needs done here. Yeah, there's very, very, very specific work. Yes, Jenny. So it would be important first before you do that, right? And this is going to be helpful tomorrow night, right? So Jenny's saying, am I saying I allow myself to feel and be gentle with the way I feel and tell myself it's okay, it'll pass? That's part of it, but it's not all of it. Tomorrow night, we're going to talk about that in great detail because that's self-soothing language. That's how you treat yourself in emotion. But what we want to understand is, how do you feel about your emotions that you're having? What do you say about what they'll do to you? How do you understand yourself in those emotions? We want to take that stuff away. And then what we want to do is support ourselves in that emotion, which is principle 4, which is what we're coming to tomorrow night, right? So principle 4 is, how do you treat yourself in emotion? Are you gentle? Are you kind? Are you compassionate? Just like Jenny's saying. Soothing. No, Lou. Are you a tyrant?
I think I'm rather hard on myself, put it that way.
Okay, so my word tyrant is your word hard on myself. I love that. I love that. Brilliant. Okay, so how do you treat yourself? Lambast yourself, hurt yourself, wound yourself. I used to scare the living lights out of myself. Catastrophize everything. Make everything the biggest thing that you could ever possibly say. That comes from alcoholism, I have to say. Comes from living in alcohol, comes from living in high drama stakes. But I used to scare the living lights out of myself. How do you treat yourself? How do you look after yourself? Because that's exactly, Jenny, what you're saying there. It looks like you have the capacity to be kind to yourself. But how you treat yourself, if you've got wrapping, do you see how you treat yourself? Yes, blame myself for everything. Who blames themselves for the feelings that they have inside themselves? Yeah, so tomorrow night, what we're talking about. Yeah, so tomorrow night, what we're talking about is how we treat ourselves, and that's the 4th principle. Now we can start to see these principles coming together. And we see them coming together, and then we can understand the components of our emotional turmoil quite clearly. Are you starting to get a glimpse of that extra bit now for tomorrow night? Yeah, and we'll look at how we treat ourselves. We'll look at how we hurt ourselves, how we add, instead of soothing and looking after ourselves, how we do what was done. Yeah. And this then gives us the components of what is in the emotional turmoil, and then we have to have a plan. And we'll work through the plan tomorrow night. And we'll get very specific, depending on your answers, we'll get very specific. And and I'll give you a plan on where to start. You start here. If you're disunified, that's your first goal. To gently learn regulation tools. I'll have all of the stuff for you. Yeah, happy enough? All right. Anybody, any questions? I love that, Claire. Sharon says, I hate myself. I hate myself. That's how I treat myself. And Sharon saying, I should know better. I should do better. This is how we treat ourselves. So I want you to step back a wee minute tonight and think about that. I want you to think about even that language. What emotion does that language create in your body? Creates anger, creates shame, creates blame. So if we're blaming and shaming and hurting ourselves, and we have rapping, and we have an emotion in the middle of all of that, can you see the depth of the turmoil that we're in? Can you see why we're in turmoil? Because we're adding to what is in there. And we have to protect ourselves and look after ourselves a wee bit better than that. Like, look out for each other and look out for ourselves a wee bit better than that. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, Bernadette. When we see other people hurting, we don't shout at them, call them names. And it's good enough for us too. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now we're all that I am hopeful and praying for is that we're beginning to see the components of emotional turmoil. And we're beginning to see how we can begin the process of undoing that turmoil, because it is ours and we're in the driving seat. No problem. Yes, Jenny, no problem. There's recordings. If you've signed up, did you come through? The lighting's funny. If you've come through on the, if you've signed up and you get your emails, then there'll be a link for the replays. It's no problem whatsoever. Tomorrow night, I'm going to talk about a way that you can work with me in a group level. So we'll talk about that. And I love that. It explains a lot of the fights that I have with myself every day, the core of it all. Okay, brilliant, Anne. Yes, it's painful to unwrap. It's painful to unwrap. It's painful to do any of the work. And that has to be a decision that we make. You know, do we do the work or do we not do the work? And nobody can make you do that. That has to be your own. Oh, transformation through session. So the work, somebody's come through Facebook here and asked a question. Emotional mastery is a process. This is what we call, this is an emotional mastery process. An emotional mastery process is these 3 stages. It's unity, it's unwrapping, and it's self-soothing as a process. There's 3 stages to the process. It depends on your practitioner, and it depends on your own levels of awareness, where you're coming in at. If you're coming in a disunity, it takes longer. If you're coming in with some levels of unity. So again, that's why I've got you to do the test, because I want you to be really, really realistic about the length of time and about the work that is needed, because there's no point, you know, giving you fairy dust and saying, oh, this will all be gone in 2 weeks, because what does that do? It re-cements again the issue of failing. So that's not what this is about. It's about a very detailed look of the work that has to be done, a very realistic view of it, and a plan on how to do it. Yeah, and the truth of it is, you know, we have obviously trained therapists that understand emotional mastery. And you can choose to do that in a group, or you can choose to do that way one-to-one. By the way, this is not an advertisement for therapy, for clearing therapy. This is an absolute genuine understanding of your emotional turmoil, and seeing if you want to take that further. So this isn't about, and never has been about, getting you into therapy in any form. Brilliant, Michelle. I'm delighted. Mention, why do I feel like it? Yes. Brilliant. Brilliant. Brilliant, Jenny. So there, I'm just a human being. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And I love the love that everybody's given Jenny. So Jenny's hearing herself, beginning to hear yourself, which is just fan bloody tastic. Light bulb moments, Michelle. Brilliant. Yeah. Yeah, that's a difficult one, Jill. That's a completely difficult one, because there's no advice for that, isn't there? That's about your own safety and about your own. And I would say losing control at somebody that's coming at you is a very realistic response, and something that would need boundaries and safety and help with, and probably not part of this emotional mastery process, if I'm honest. Yeah, because all this emotional mastery process is about what you can control within you. But if you're getting that from outside yourself, it's very hard, because it's not a one-way process. It's a two-way process. Somebody has to be responsible for their own stuff. And if that's not happening, then it's the only protection of yourself. That's the truth. And this emotional turmoil, you may be able to pick parts of it up. But if you're getting that on a continuous basis, how do you stop that emotional turmoil without stopping the influx? Very hard, very, very difficult. Okay, so I will see you tomorrow night for how we treat ourselves, how we look after ourselves. And hopefully that was helpful. Anybody, any questions, let us know. And tomorrow night we will do Principle 4, and then we'll do our questions for Principle 4, which are really easy. And then we'll go back over our questions, and from those questions we'll devise a plan. Happy enough? Okay, brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you. All right, helpful. Good, Liz. Good review for you.
Yeah, excellent. Really, really good tonight. Thanks.
Good.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
good reminders. Yeah.
Good. Okay. And you getting enough? I know I was chatting to you last night about, are you getting enough? Are you getting it professionally, or are you getting it personally?
Both, but probably personally, just where I'm at with my work. I'm applying it all inside. So that's really helpful.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Especially when you're working on core stuff. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you to everybody that shared. Thank you everybody that participated. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your wonder. And thank you for your curiosity towards yourself, because that's what sets us free. All right. Okay. See you tomorrow night. See everybody that's in the collective. I'll see you in the link in the next. I'll see you in the next room. All right. See you then. Okay. Bye. 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 Oh.